In a newly released excerpt from the upcoming book Nightmare Scenario, inside the Trump administration's response to the pandemic that changed history, two Washington Post reporters claim that then President Donald Trump, quote, considered sending Americans infected with COVID to Guantanamo Bay to keep U.S. COVID numbers down.
Joining us now to discuss is Democratic strategist and owner of JC Strategies, Jennifer Holdsworth-Karp, and Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, and co-author of Conservative, Knowing What to Keep, Rachel Bovard. Thanks, both of you, for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you.
This is a interesting topic. Rachel, what do you make of this? Do you think is this more anonymous reporting, sources say inside the White House, or does this kind of sound like something President Trump would have absolutely recommended?
Yeah, I have a hard time, I'm going to be totally honest, believing a lot of the post-Trump tales that are being woven only because, they've been wrong a lot of times or hyperbolic. But all of that said, can we finally just close Gitmo now? Will this be the thing that actually does it? Can we finally do it? But I think, my other thought was this. I do think that it is concerning to me when I'm thinking about sort of the abuse of public health laws, Robbie, that you probably know about having spent some time covering. It is concerning to me that our public health laws might actually allow us to do this, because they're just so expansive and can be so abused that we actually could. And I'm fairly certain that at the height of the pandemic, there were several New York Times reporters that would have happily sent Ron DeSantis and the entire state of Florida to Gitmo. So we should probably just close it for good measure.
Well, I was actually in Florida during the pandemic, and so I would have a large problem with being sent to Gitmo as a member of the state of Florida at the time. Jennifer, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I mean, we all know that Trump is not a student of history. I think is a fair statement, and probably didn't realize the the negative connotations that most Americans had with Gitmo at the time. I agree, we should close it, but what's your take? Is this a real thing or not?
I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with my learned colleague here. I tend to absolutely believe that this is something that he said. It sounds just like him because, like you said, again, there is rarely any historical perspective that has ever come out of the Trump administration or the Trump presidency. I am glad that there were better angels that did exist in that administration to talk something crazy like this down. On the other hand, I guess at one point, President Trump was actually taking COVID seriously. Obviously, his administration was all over the map. At one point, you had his press secretary out on Fox News saying that COVID would never come here. You're not going to see diseases like that in America. And then in the next breath, you hear it called a hoax and it doesn't really exist and nobody's dying from it. We're having, big indoor rallies. So obviously, his administration was all over the map due to his lack of leadership, his lack of understanding, his lack of scientific acknowledgement, his lack of historical perspective. So, no, I am not even remotely surprised that this was a suggestion that came out of the president's mouth. It sounds par for the course. But I think we can all agree that perhaps this is the time to finally have a conversation about closing Gitmo, which I have been rapidly advocating for over 20 years now.
Jennifer, why didn't the Obama White House do that? They promised to do that, and that was one of the I was not particularly enthusiastic about Obama or his rivals either of either of his election cycles, but with Obama, at least in 2008, I was thinking, well, we're going to get Guantanamo closed. That'll be good. Didn't happen. So it feels a little unfair to bring this kind of a criticism of a conservative administration back from cold storage when there was an intervening time in between where you could have shut it down.
Oh, I completely agree. I'm not saying at all that Obama was not at fault for closing it. However, I think what happens when a lot of presidents, including President Trump, get in there, they learn a bunch of things that the rest of us don't know, right? And I have very, 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 very little sliver of experience with Guantanamo Bay because while I was in law school, I helped defend a detainee that was there. With a clinic at my law school, somebody who had been locked up for a number of years without trial, without charges, right? So I think that, unfortunately, through that learning experience, I also learned about a number of other folks who were there who were direct absolute threats on a daily basis to the safety and security of America. So I think it is a very sticky topic that unfortunately a lot of Americans don't dive into on a daily basis. And by the way, we have the privilege not to. We elect people to make sure that they're paying attention to these issues. So while, yes, I personally have advocated for it to be closed, both Democrats and Republicans have heard from me about it. There's more to the issue than meets the eye, unfortunately. However, that security threat has since absolutely waned over the last 8 years, and I think it's something that we need to focus on now.
Well, Rachel, though, don't you think it's the partisan framing of these issues, right? Liberals, I know liberals in the media, in the policy world, who did support, not quarantining people in Guantanamo Bay, but quarantining people. If Anthony Fauci suggested Guantanamo Bay as a way to deal with the coronavirus, don't you think there would be, the mainstream media would be falling over itself to endorse this plan? Is that crazy?
No, I mean, I had a very similar thought that at times during this pandemic, when the quarantine fever was so hot, anyone leaving their house was suspect. Whatever Anthony Fauci said goes. I can very much see a situation where, people, if he said jump, people would say, yeah, get me to Gitmo, which kind of goes back to the point I'm trying to make, which is look, our public health laws might actually allow this in this country. I think what we've learned over the last year is that public health, in the name of public health, you can do a lot of crazy things that may in fact violate people's civil liberties. I didn't put Gitmo on the list, but now I'm considering that as a possibility, renditioning for illness. And I think that's something that we probably should solve, in addition to closing Gitmo.
Well, it's actually pretty interesting and a little bit hypocritical on the Trump administration's part, because they did reinstitute travel restrictions to Cuba unless, I guess, you had COVID. And then you could visit Cuba, but only if you went to Guantanamo. Ladies, it's such a pleasure to hang out with you. Thank you for your thoughts and expertise this morning. We'll have more Rising right after this.